Well, let's talk about this now some more with Richard Black. He's the director at the Energy and Climate Intelligence Unit. A very good morning to you. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us. Just give us some context to all of this, because fires do occur naturally within the Amazon, especially at this time of year, much like tinder, with all the dry parts of the forest catching fire due to the intense heat. Also, it's traditional form of clearing. So how much worse is it than it should be?
Well, it's about twice as bad if you look at this year compared with the same period last year, and the number of fires across Brazil, it's almost double the number of fires. So that shows you there's a really startling increase. And this has three different impacts on climate change. So first of all, you've got large quantities of carbon dioxide going into the atmosphere, and the impact of this can be huge. A few years ago, there were big forest fires in Indonesia. Those forest fires chucked out more carbon dioxide per day than the whole of Europe chucked out per day. So this can be very significant. Secondly, you've got fewer trees there to absorb the carbon dioxide. And thirdly, most worrying in the long term, there are basically computer models of the future that show that if warming gets to a certain level, the Amazon starts drying out, the whole ecosystem changes. You no longer have rainforest there. It's replaced by grasslands, and all the carbon absorption that we currently get from the Amazon is lost. So that's not certain, but it certainly could happen. And the more fires there are, the more this gets burnt, the more likely that scenario is to come to pass.
Okay, so a very grave situation, as you paint it there. Let's talk about Jair Bolsonaro in all of this, himself a climate skeptic and questioning the data relating to the extent of the fires as well.
Yes, I thought it was very rich of Mr. Bolsonaro when he was accusing President Macron of using this for political gain. Really, what this speaks to, I think, is Mr. Bolsonaro's own political strategy. The people who vote for him, his political philosophy is very much based on sort of, the farmers, the loggers of Brazil. Let's just let them do what they want. Will stimulate economic growth, will make communities better on that way. A rather interesting little thing that I discovered this morning is if Brazil is a federal system, the state governments are quite powerful as well as the national government. And if you look at those states in the Western Amazon where Mr. Bolsonaro's allies sit as state governors, those are the states that have seen the highest increases in forest fires. So there's absolutely no quibble, I think, with the notion that there's something political behind this.
What are you suggesting is behind it politically?
Well, I think Mr. Bolsonaro and his allies are appealing to a certain type of Brazilian populism, nationalism, you can say, which is about really taking off restraints. It's about letting the farmers, the loggers do what they want. It's got to be a short-lived. If you get any economic benefit at all from this, it's very short-lived. As we've seen, it's producing a lot of international condemnation. There's talk of trade deals being suspended because of it. There'll certainly be aid to the Amazon that's suspended because of it. So really, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how Mr. Bolsonaro navigates his way through this.
This weekend, we've got the G7. We've had President Emmanuel Macron of France tweeting, our house is burning, literally, and he's been tweeting #Act for the Amazon. How helpful is his intervention, or is it really an opportunity for us all to look at our own role in how we affect carbon and emissions globally?
Well, I think the latter is definitely true, because absolutely something like this, together with everything else that's been going on over the last couple of years, I think it does make people look at what they're doing individually and at what their governments are doing as well, and the businesses from whom with whom they trade. In terms of the impact on the Amazon, even though, if the G7 or the international community more broadly started to look at sanctions against Brazil, that would obviously have an economic impact. But in political terms, it perhaps feeds Mr. Bolsonaro's narrative that he's actually doing things for Brazilians against the rest of the world. So in terms of just, and one doesn't know, of course, how other populist leaders, including Mr. Trump, will deal with this. So it's going to be interesting to watch how this unfolds.
Really interesting to hear from you, Richard Black. Thanks very much indeed.